Hey, it's Rachel Carroll with the Neuromuscular Studio. I am doing the second interview with my wellness and physical experts this week. And I wanted to introduce to you J.A. Graves of Total Body Rehab. Today, we are going to be talking about lower back pain and sciatica pain, and how you can help those things at home while you might find yourself at home right now, either working from home or home because of your kids, or perhaps you're just doing social distancing or are in self-quarantine. For whatever reason, you're unable to come into your physical therapy or neuromuscular massage therapy appointments. So I wanted to talk with J.A. today a little bit about how can we help our lower back pain at home, especially if we are sitting at a computer doing our work. We're under high stress, which always increases our neural response and perpetuates kind of the pain cycle in muscle. I wanted to kind of get his ideas on some things that we can do, that you can do at home to help you fare a little bit better. So, J.A.?
Cool. Well, first of all, my name is J.A. Graves. I'm with Total Body Rehab. Thank you for tuning in, those of you out there. Kind of like Rachel said, what we're going to talk about today is some ways in which you can self-diagnose and treat back pain and or sciatica. The really cool thing about this is all we have to do is use a couple of basic movements to identify why we might be having the pain and use movements to resolve it or get rid of it or mostly take care of it. Now, one of the big things that Rachel touched on was sitting, right? So we're all, kind of self-quarantining right now. We're hanging out at the house. We're doing a lot of Netflix and hanging out. And unfortunately, that will only or can only perpetuate your lower back pain. And what we find with most people is that flexion or forward bending or sitting, something like this, tends to be a very provocative movement. So as we're going through these movements that I demonstrate, you might find that this becomes very apparent. You're like, oh my gosh, yeah, flexion is probably the worst thing I can do. Yet we continue to do it, right? And unfortunately, that's just the way that it works. So we're going to try to identify what movement it is that you might be doing too much of that could be causing your back pain and or sciatica, as well as finding what movement you need to do more of to mitigate that or get rid of it. Okay?
Makes sense.
So, anything you want to add before I get started?
Well, I was just going to say, from personal experience, I have had bouts of lower back pain flare where it came actually from my psoas. So your psoas is your primary hip flexor that connects the upper femur with the anterior lumbar spine, the front lumbar spine. And when that muscle gets tight, it can actually pull on the lumbar spine and create a pain pattern and dysfunction, which can mimic, some other, lower back conditions as well. So I personally experienced this, and one reason that psoas gets tight is because you are in this forward hip flexed position. That actually biomechanically shortens the psoas hip flexor muscle, which can then exacerbate the pain pattern, correct?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm sure he will talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So one of the things I just want to preface before we get too far into this, before I get into the movements, is that lower back pain can be caused by a multitude of factors. Perhaps the most important advice I can give those of you out there suffering with low back pain and or sciatica, especially during this time where we're kind of stuck at home, is move. I always tell my patients, and if you're watching this and you're a patient of mine, you've been in the clinic, you know that one of the things I say to everybody is that the motion is the lotion. So the more you can move, the better. What I'm going to go over right now are specific movements to help, again, diagnose and resolve your particular pain. And I should also preface this again with, unless I can speak to you via the telephone or a FaceTime or video chat like this, or see you in the clinic, this is not going to be individualized. This
Correct.
is very general.
Yes.
So keep that in mind. But in a large percentage of the population, even without examining you individually, we can still see very good success in using these strategies. Okay? So without further ado, I'll demonstrate just a few movements that you guys can do to help identify why you might be having the pain, and then show you some movements you can do to help get rid of it. All right?
And I want to just piggyback on that, our bodies are just meant to move. They just are. They're designed to move. They are not designed to sit for hours at a time, which we all find ourselves doing when we're in a work project, when we're watching Netflix, or whatever we're doing. So one of my things that I recommend that people do is set a timer. So set a timer on your phone, every 30 minutes, I don't know what your recommendation is, but I say every 30 minutes, 45 minutes, get up and move around regardless of if that email has to get out in 5 minutes, your priority is your body and to make sure that you're healthy and having less pain. So,
Absolutely. And to piggyback off of that, if you drink a lot of water, you will have to get up at least every hour.
Oh, that's true.
So drink a lot of water because you'll have to go to the bathroom. That will force you to get up and move around a little bit.
There you go.
All right?
All right.
So I'm going to go over basically 3 movements in standing that you can use to see what might be causing your pain. And again, this is going to lead into ways in which you can help mitigate it or get rid of it. All right? So the first thing you're going to do is in standing, you're going to bend forward and touch your toes, or try to touch your toes. Everybody laughs when I tell them to touch their toes because it's apparently very difficult to do. And that's going to look like this. So what you're going to do is you're going to do that one time and just pay attention. Does that hurt your back? Does it make your existing back pain worse? Do you feel sharp shooting pain down your leg? Now what's important is to be able to determine if that sharp shooting pain is just a stretch of the hamstring or if it's your sciatic nerve that's angry. Okay? If it feels stretchy, it's probably the hamstring. If it feels like it's burning and it's on one side, it's probably your sciatic nerve. Okay? So you're going to do that one time. After you kind of assess how you feel, you're going to do that 10 times. Okay? So just like this. Down and up. You don't have to hold for any length of time. I just want you to do that for 10 repetitions. And pay attention. Does that make your leg pain worse? Do you feel more sciatica after doing that? Or do you feel more back pain? Or on the other side of things, do you feel less sciatica or less back pain? Now, if you're not able to tell, you might try doing 10 more. And there's no harm in doing 20 or 30 of these to identify the response your body is taking. So again, I might do 10 and be like, my back feels totally fine. But if you do 10 more, you might now have back pain on the right side or the left side or right in the center. Mm-hmm. And that's important to identify because if we can't get this pain provoked, we don't know how to treat, right? We don't know where to go from there.
Yeah, for sure.
All right? So that's the first set of movements. Again, you're going to do 1 toe touch, see how you feel, and then you're going to do 10 toe touches and see how you feel. Okay? Next, we're going to do backwards bending. You'll put the hands on the lower back and lean back. Now, for many of you, this is going to be very uncomfortable the first time you do this. Not a lot of people do this movement. Okay? Again, we spend a lot of time sitting in our offices, bending forward, and so bending backwards is not a real common movement for us. But again, we're going to do 1 repetition, and we're going to see how does that make our back feel, and how does it make our leg feel if we have symptoms of sciatica. Just like we did with forward bending, after we do 1, we're going to do 10. And again, what does 10 repetitions do? Does it make my back pain worse? Does it make my leg pain worse? Does it make things better? All right? The next movement this is movement number 3 here. You're going to go up against a wall, that would be for the treatment if we need to go that route. You're going to stand with your hands on your hips, and you're just going to shift your hips to one side and then the other side. Now, I would recommend doing this in a mirror so you can see your movement, to see if you've lost movement on one side or see if you move more on one side versus the other. Okay? So hands on the hips, and again, you're looking at how much movement you can get. You're also assessing the pain response. Does it make your back pain worse? Does it make your leg pain worse? Okay? So those are the 3 movements I want you guys to try. Toe touch 1 time, and then 10. Backwards bend 1 time, and then 10. And then side shift 1 time each direction, and then 10 times each direction. Okay? Now, depending upon what that tells you as you're going through these movements, you're going to pick one of those 3 movements to use as treatment. Now again, this is going to be very general advice because I can't speak with each of you one-on-one, and I'm going to go ahead and tell you what would probably happen in most cases. In most cases, forward bending is going to be the most provocative thing for people. That's going to either make your sciatic pain worse if it's coming from your lumbar spine. Rachel's going to talk a little bit about if it could be coming from your hip and your piriformis muscle. If it's coming from your lumbar spine, in most cases it will be provoked with forward bending. So again, we're going to go off the premise that that's you out there. If that's the case, you're going to try 1 basic movement for your treatment. Okay? It's very important that you monitor the response of your movement to see what that does to your pain. You're going to get on a table, slide that over just a little bit, the floor or couch or bed, on your stomach, and we're going to press up like this. Now, those of you who follow me or follow Total Body Rehab, you've seen this exercise before as part of our Mobility Monday series. This is called a prone press up. Okay? Couple important things here. When you you got to get your arms fully extended. You need to exhale and sag at the top of the movement. So we'll go from here and let it all go. Okay? Now again, if you're not used to doing this movement, your back might hurt. If you have sciatica and this takes your leg pain away but makes your back pain worse, that's actually a very good thing. Trust me. If your leg pain goes away but your back pain gets worse, that's okay. Now, if you have pain on one side, maybe the right side, and you do this 10 times or 20 times, and the pain goes to the center of your back, that's also very good. Okay? If it stays on that one side, we might have to pick a different strategy. But again, that might require more of a one-on-one, consultation via the phone, a video chat like this, or having you come into the clinic. But in a nutshell, if you've identified that this is the most provocative movement for you, the prone press-up is probably going to be the best exercise to help mitigate some of that pain.
Fantastic. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So should we talk a little bit about the muscular
Absolutely,
aspects of
yes.
it? Okay, so one question that I get with neuromuscular massage is, how do I know if what I have is true sciatica or piriformis syndrome? Piriformis syndrome is actually a muscular syndrome that will mimic the patterns of sciatic pain down the back of the leg. There actually is another thing as well that could also be mimicking sciatic pain, which are the actual trigger points in the piriformis muscle that can refer pain down the back of the leg, hamstring, calf, into the foot. So true sciatica is actually going to be coming directly from the nerve root, the disc, in the lumbar spine, and it creates kind of that compression and impingement right at the spine, and then goes all the way down the leg. Now, piriformis syndrome, piriformis is one of your primary hip rotators. We have 6 that are deep to the glutes that go from the greater trochanter of the femur towards the midline, the sacrum. The piriformis is the problem child in muscular conditions and in neuromuscular therapy because it is the only hip rotator that attaches to the anterior or the front side of the sacrum to help with that rotation. There are some people who have a sciatic nerve that runs through the piriformis muscle. Most runs underneath, but regardless, because of that, when that piriformis muscle becomes really, really tight and contracted, it will compress the sciatic nerve right on that spot. And people who have a sciatic nerve that runs and pierces through the muscle, when that happens, generally have a lot more pain in the hip and down the leg. So we don't really know, from a neuromuscular therapy perspective, we're not really sure if you have true sciatica or piriformis syndrome. That's out of our scope. That would require imaging and or an eval with someone like JA. But how we like to treat it is, we know that if your tissue is tight, regardless of if you have true sciatica or piriformis syndrome, all of those glute muscles, all of those hip rotators, your hamstrings, your calf, all of those soft tissues do need to be treated to give you better biomechanics, but then also to treat the trigger points that are in the muscle. Now, the other thing that could be causing and mimicking a sciatic pain are specifically trigger points in muscle tissue. There are quite a few in the glute muscles: glute max, glute medius, and glute minimus, and also piriformis, that will refer pain to the back of the leg and down the calf. So we really try to hone in on those spots. So trigger points are actually, they're kind of like reporting stations. I always like to say it's kind of like the National Weather Service, right? So all of these trigger points are specific nodules in tight bands of muscle tissue that send a signal to the brain to tell the brain, is there a hurricane going on in here? Is this like a 9-10 level pain? Or is it just a little bit of a Midwest thunderstorm, rolling through Chicago? Is it going to be kind of like a 5 or 6 kind of a pain? Or is it just partly sunny in Arizona, or fully sunny in Arizona? And the brain doesn't have to process those signals at all. So we always want to look at what is the brain's response, that's the neuro in neuromuscular therapy, as far as how it makes the muscle tighten and contract. So long story short, what we want to do is we always want to treat those trigger points because we don't know what kind of pain signal it is sending to the brain and how the brain is processing it and then bringing it back down into the body. So piriformis syndrome and then also the trigger points from the piriformis muscle or the glute muscles will refer that similar pattern. So in what we do in conjunction with physical therapy is we work all of the soft tissue to treat and to rule out that aspect of it, the soft tissue portions of that. And it also helps you progress faster with physical therapy because now your tissues are more fluid. Your tissues aren't fighting each other to do biomechanical movements, and then you can make more progress and you can make more gains. So that's kind of how we, that's how we roll. And then how you can do as far as at home with taking a tennis ball or a lacrosse ball, or what else do you recommend people do at home?
Not a golf ball.
Yeah, golf ball
That's
is way
a little
too hard.
aggressive.
You need give, you need movement. A long time ago, I had a professional athlete tell me that a traditional foam roller was not giving him the resistance that he needed, and he just went to Home Depot and got a PVC pipe. And so I had a little conversation about putting a pool noodle over that PVC pipe to give a little bit of give. So the golf ball is the same thing. We don't want to, that's way too much pressure on your tissue. All of the work at home is to basically elongate and self-treat tissue, not to impact it and bruise it. We don't want to be creating more inflammation in the tissue. We want to help you not have that. Okay. So a tennis ball, lacrosse ball is probably the hardest that I would recommend. But what you can do is you can actually put it against the wall. You can put it against the wall and kind of push up against it and then just roll up and down, and you'll be able to feel those spots where the trigger points are in the glutes and the piriformis muscle. But that will really, really help to mitigate some of those pains from muscle and whatnot, in conjunction with what JA will recommend for your lower back.
Of course,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
I do want to add a couple things to that. I realized I showed you guys the kind of ultimate progression of exercises. Not everybody this isn't a one-size-fits-all thing. So what I wanted to go over was just a few exercises that might be easier or a better starting point depending on where you're at. So real quick here, if you happen to have, again, I'm going to go off the idea that bending forward was the most provocative movement for you, whether that be for your leg or for your back. What might be a good starting point for some of you is to just lay on your stomach with a pillow underneath your hips, okay? And you might decide to lay here for 5-10 minutes, and again, you want to monitor your symptoms. If we're still having pain in the legs or the back, we might need to make things more aggressive for our stretch, okay? So let's say you try this, and this is not quite for you. You feel like you need a little bit more. We take the pillow out, okay? Again, lie here for 5 to 10 minutes, and monitor your response to the position. So if your leg pain is getting better, good. If your back pain is getting better, good. If your back pain or leg pain are getting worse, if your leg pain is getting worse, this might not be a good strategy for you, but it will more than likely make your back pain a little bit worse as the leg pain gets better.
Now, now, are you in a completely neutral position?
Yeah,
or
so
are you
you're just totally flat.
contracting?
You're flat.
Okay, so you're not contracting glutes, you're not contracting perispinals.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Okay.
So then the next progression would be, if you want to try to make it a little bit more intense or an aggressive stretch, you come up on your elbows. And again, we're relaxed. We're not squeezing anything, we're just hanging out here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Again, 5-10 minutes. Probably start with 5 if you've never done it before.
Okay.
And now, again, for those of you who are maybe a little bit more flexible or feel like this is helping your leg pain a little bit, let's say, again, we're dealing with some sciatica here, but it's not really taking it away fully, that's when this becomes really nice, okay? So if you're getting some benefit but not complete benefit, and we're thinking it's coming from your lower back, then you want to progress to this version.
Okay. And how long would they hold that?
So you don't want to hold this for really any length of time. You just want to do it for repetitions.
Okay.
So we're going to do about 10 repetitions, 3 to 5 times a day, monitoring the symptoms. If your leg pain is getting better, that's a very good sign. If your leg pain is getting better and your back pain is getting worse, just trust me, that's also a very good thing. That's a great time to add in your soft tissue treatment to those trigger points of the lower back, as well as your glute muscles and your piriformis.
Well, and this motion actually helps to almost self-massage all of those paraspinal muscles that connect, your the base of your the base of your spine, all the way up with your lumbar vertebrae, and any of that movement will help to create a little bit more pliability in those muscles. When we are, here's another plug for drinking water, right? When our tissues are dehydrated, what we like to tell people is that basically working with beef jerky. You have more friction in the tissue, right? So if your tissue is hydrated, there's going to be less friction, which means less inflammation, which means less pain. We actually, as soft tissue experts and neuromuscular therapists, we can tell if you drink water. We can tell how pliable your tissue is. So I would say with doing the exercises that he's recommending, just make sure you're hydrated prior to, because you're going to get more bang for your buck out of your exercise by doing that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So, cool. All right.
Yeah, so and again, I just want to preface one more time. I just want to tell you guys, first of all, thank you for tuning in, those of you who are watching. And again, if you feel like, maybe you don't fit the category of somebody who would benefit from this particular exercise, don't hesitate to call the office. We can talk over the phone. We can do a chat over something like this, a Zoom call or something like that. As well as, we welcome you into the clinic. We're keeping the clinic very clean right now for our patients. Everybody's doing quite well. But again, if you're not quite sure this is the strategy for you, don't hesitate to reach out. I know that this is a pretty general prescription, but it's important that if you want to get the most out of this, that you definitely talk to somebody.
Yeah, and especially if you have any concerns, if you've had surgeries, if you're currently being treated with other measures, and you're just not really sure how this might fit in. We want you to be more comfortable and more educated. The more education, the better, right? That's one of my core values with my company. So,
absolutely.
Anyway, that's why we're here. That's why we're doing this. So, all right. So thank you, J.A.
Yep, thank you.
Appreciate it for sure. So everybody else out there, thank you so much. And I will be continuing these expert interviews throughout the week. I have a couple more on the books. So keep tuning in to either the studio page in Gilbert or the studio page in Tempe, and I'll be posting where those interviews are going to be. But thank you, and we hope this has been very helpful. All right, have a great day. Stay safe out there.